Yeah.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. As you can see, we got a bit of a jam-packed episode here. I haven't talked to you guys since, I believe, last Thursday before the Sixers Game 6 against the Raptors. Me and my buddy Phil Stifle, we previewed that game, and we got it right. But I guess when you pick the Sixers to win so often, you're going to get most of them right when they actually do win, right? No, but I'm just kidding. We were definitely a little hesitant to pick the Sixers in Game 6 in Toronto, but there was something that was kind of clicked in. I think both me and Phil saw it. Coming out, laying an egg like that in Game 5 in Philly, in front of your home crowd, nobody played well. They come out, they lay it to the Raptors in Game 6 there. And I had a feeling that they were going to come out, make a point. If they are as good as I thought if they are as good as I think they are, when Embiid is fully healthy, obviously, that's the caveat now. When Embiid is healthy and available for the team, I knew they were going to make a statement win to close out that game and show that they were clearly the better team than Toronto. And that's exactly what happened in Game 6. Obviously, we had the unfortunate elbow to the face for Embiid. Made me sick to my stomach. Obviously, he was called for a foul in that play. Somehow that's an and one for Pascal Siakam. Makes me sick nonetheless. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about the Raptors, their fans. It's not worth my time of day. Honestly, I became fed up with the city of Toronto, their fans, the way they operate, the way they present themselves. They're very, just as far as the people I've interacted with, because there's people that says this about Philly fans. I get it. I'm not going to sit here and generalize. The Toronto fans that I interacted with throughout this series disgusted me. And mostly because they were okay with wishing injury on Embiid. They were okay with, chanting fuck Embiid as his face is fractured by your player throwing an elbow. That's disgusting behavior. And in the moment, of course, you can chant whatever you want to Embiid. I get it. He did the showboating. I get that. But afterwards, to double down on it in my comments and TikTok, all around social media, it's weird. The Toronto writers, weird, saying that that's karma for doing an airplane sign whenever you make a dunk. Is Embiid the first guy to ever celebrate after he gets a good play in a playoff series? I don't think so. And I don't think every player that's celebrated in a playoff series has caught an elbow to the face that breaks their orbital bone. So I'm not hearing that. It's disgusting nonetheless. And if Philly did anything close to this, if there was a majority of a Philly fan base acting that way, saying the things that they're saying, it would be blasted. It would be plastered all over national media. Everybody would be talking about it. But because it's against Philly, it's okay. And because it's Embiid, I had a Raptors fan say he's made of glass. Is that appropriate for you to say after your player that wasn't a basketball play? That was an elbow to the face. It's not a basketball play. Fractured his facial structure. Like, you fractured his orbital bone. But he's made of glass. Is that okay for you to think? I don't get it. Like I said, don't want to waste a ton of time on Toronto, their fan base, or that team that just simply wasn't worth the time of day. I'm mad that the Sixers extended it to 6 games. They should have got them out of there in 4 or 5. But nonetheless, here we are. We're in round 2 against Miami. So we're going to break down that series. I'm going to give you my prediction as far as who I think is going to win. A lot of caveats in that prediction because there's a lot of question marks all across the board right now. But first, before we do that, we're definitely going to just touch on some of the action from yesterday. I also want to give you my series predictions. So as we go through these, I'll give you just I'll give you my full series prediction before game ones yesterday. I wish I would have got to you guys yesterday like I usually do in the morning of Sundays. Had a rough Saturday. Went out with some friends on Saturday night. Could not function yesterday properly. So wanted to make sure I get this out today. Get the good content in. Quality over, over anything else. That's the point here. So wanted to get some quality content, but nonetheless, we had 2 game ones of the round 2 start off yesterday. Let's talk about it a little bit. Get my coffee in me. Before we talk about the basketball games from yesterday, just got to do a little bit of house cleaning here. Make sure if you're not already, follow DSM Media on all social media platforms. That's who the Scotty Talks NBA is presented by. You can follow DSM Media on Twitter at DSM_media. You can also find DSM Media on TikTok at DSM Media. And you can also find DSM Media on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram at dsm.dosomethingmajor. On Facebook, just DSM Media. Type it in your search bar. You see the logo right there. We are. Make sure you're following us on all social media platforms. We bring content consistently and daily, and we have quite a few shows on our network that are going on every day of the week. So definitely check out DSM Media, and of course, make sure you're subscribed to DSM Media on YouTube. Turn the notifications on. Like I said, we have content coming out daily. You want to stay on top of that, stay on top of Philly sports, stay on top of the entire sports spectrum with DSM Media. And of course, myself, you can find me at Scotty Drown across the board on social media. It's the same on every social media outlet. And you can see everything in the comments as well as the description there. You'll be able to find the links to all our social media platforms. Enough of the housekeeping, enough of the the small talk. Let's get into what is actually going on in the NBA right now. So, first bit of action we had yesterday, we had the Bucks taking on the Celtics. So the Boston Celtics were hosting the Milwaukee Bucks yesterday in Boston. And the Bucks came away with the win, 101-89. We had Giannis Antetokounmpo with 24 points, 13 rebounds, 12 assists. He was 9 for 25 from the field, but 24 points, 13 rebounds, 12 assists. I'll take a low efficiency in scoring if you're going to give me the output in every other facet of the game like that. Masterclass from Giannis. I know it was a bad shooting night, especially for Giannis, but nonetheless, 24, 13, and 12. Come on. Drew Holiday, 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. He was 8 for 20 from the field. So once again, Drew, Giannis, your 2 best players right now with Middleton out, neither of them shot the ball well, and you were able to win this game by double digits. What's that say? We had Jason Tatum, 21 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. He was 6 for 18 from the field. Jaylen Brown, 12 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 for 13 from the field. Both of those guys. That's a very disappointing output, especially in a game 1 in Boston. But I think there had to be a little bit of a Brooklyn hangover there. You just come out of sweeping Brooklyn. You kind of handled them. You handled them pretty steadily, consistently, and you were able to put them down within 4 games. So I don't know if that leads to, false confidence or overconfidence. But nonetheless, I think they just came out game 1, laid an egg, played really flat. You had the Marcus Smart dislocated shoulder, the injury that took him out kind of threw him off. And let's be honest, Marcus Smart losing a player like that mid-game, whether he comes back or not in that game, it throws your team off ridiculously. You talk about a guy that does a lot for that Boston team defensively and offensively in reality. So you definitely want to see better shooting from Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, just to be more involved in general. But Giannis and Drew didn't shoot well either. And as you can see, the Bucks, we know Boston is statistically the best defense in the NBA. Milwaukee looked like the best defense in the NBA against Boston yesterday. So I think that speaks a lot. Part of it, I think, is just that the Brooklyn Nets were simply overrated. So there was a lot of stock put into the Celtics sweeping the Brooklyn Nets, where the Milwaukee Bucks are just a completely different animal than the Brooklyn Nets. You talk about Giannis, who can just will his team to wins. He has that capability, that type of dominance to his game. And I think it's just a whole different animal for Boston to deal with. I'm not saying that Boston's going to come out here, lose the series in, 5 games or get a gentleman's sweep or even get swept. That's not going to happen, especially without Chris Middleton. This is going to be a tough series. I expect Boston to definitely bounce back in game 2. I did pick them to lose yesterday. Betting wise, I did pick Boston to lose to the Bucks. I think the Bucks are going to win this series. Don't get me wrong. But I do want to give credit where it's due for Boston. I think they just came out, laid an egg, didn't bring the energy they needed to. The Marcus Smart injury, guys weren't shooting well. You come out, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, totally different teams as far as the way they play, the way they're structured. You saw the Milwaukee Bucks take their defense to another level yesterday, and I think that's the difference between them and Brooklyn. And then aside from that, Giannis, right? So I do have Milwaukee winning that series in 7. So I do think it gets extended the full series. We didn't get that from the Brooklyn and Boston. I thought we were going to get a 7-game series from them. Brooklyn turned out to not be. They turned out to be frauds, right? KD didn't show up to that series. Milwaukee, we know Giannis is going to show up. We've seen Drew show up in the biggest of moments. Grayson Allen has stepped in. Bobby Portis comes in. Brook Lopez steps up. They got a ton of guys that can step up. They got nice depth there in Milwaukee. And let's be honest, Giannis just makes everybody around him better. And it's that simple. And it's going to be tough for Boston to win this series, although they're a very tough team. Best defense in basketball. This is going 7. I got Milwaukee, though, the defending champs. Yesterday, second bit of action we had the Warriors taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. So we had the Warriors coming away with a 117-116 win over the Memphis Grizzlies. We had Steph Curry, 24 points, 4 assists, 8 for 20 from the field. Not a great shooting night from Steph. Jordan Poole, this kid is amazing. I know I talked about it maybe a week or so back. Between him and Maxey and some of these other guys, like it's not just those two, like Desmond Bane down the line, Darius Garland. These guys are just it's crazy the way these kids are developing and the jumps that they're taking within one season. But Jordan Poole, I mean, showing up in the biggest spot that he could have possibly shown up in his career so far. It was yesterday, and he did it. 31 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists. He's doing it all. He's rebounding, he's assisting. But he's also 12 for 20 from the field, 5 for 10 from the three-point line, hit big shot after big shot. And you talk about big shots, Klay Thompson with the game-winning three-pointer to put the Warriors ahead once and for all. And then also the game-winning block on a Ja Morant layup attempt at the end of the game to close it out. Incredible performance by Klay, and I only expect him to be better. I think he only had 15 in this game. We look on the other side to Memphis. Their two best players, right, had their best games that they could possibly have. Talk about Ja Morant, 34 points, 10 assists, 9 rebounds, 14 for 31 from the field. He shot the ball well. He did all the right things. You had Jaren Jackson III, 33 points, 10 rebounds, 6 for 9 from the three-point line. It's not going to get much better than that from Jaren Jackson. And it's arguable. You could say Desmond Bane. You could say Dillon Brooks. There's an argument as far as who the two best players are on Memphis. But just talking about yesterday's game and the output, you talk about, 67 points between Ja and JJ? I mean, you're not going to get that much better. And you talk about Draymond Green got ejected early on in this game. I believe it was the second quarter he got ejected in this game for, let's be honest, a ridiculous call. We'll just put that out on the forefront there. But nonetheless, Warriors were able to come out with a W in this game where everything pointed to Memphis winning game 1. You're at home. Ja's having an electric game, borderline triple-double. JJ's hitting everything behind the arc. Like, everything looked like Memphis was supposed to win this game. You didn't have Desmond Bane. There was other guys that didn't show up. Dillon Brooks got initiated and engaged late. He was in foul trouble early. That's going to be the whole series, though. You're guarding Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Jordan Poole. It's going to be the whole series. And then you add guys like Andrew Wiggins in there. So this is going to be a tough series for Memphis. They're young. They're explosive. Don't get me wrong. They're a very, very good team. Great team. Let's be honest. They're number 2 seed in the West. Number 2 record in the entire league. So you got to put some respect on Memphis, but put that same respect on Golden State. They've been here. They've been doing this for a while, and they got the pieces in place to make sure they get to the next round. I have the Warriors in 6. That one yesterday is huge, and I did have the Warriors winning game 1. They needed to come out and make that statement against the Memphis Grizzlies, kind of not put the Grizzlies in their place, but let them know, like, we are the veteran squad. We are here. We close out games, win that way. So that was a huge win for Golden State, and I only expect that to continue. I got Golden State in 6 against Memphis. Next up, we will talk about the Mavs and the Suns. So that's the other game tonight. Obviously, we got Philadelphia and Miami squaring off first. Then we got the Mavs and Suns late game. In this game, it's going to be tough, right? I've been trying to keep my eyes on if Devin Booker is going to be playing tonight. Looks like it looks like he is going to be playing. He's not on the injury report. So Devin Booker in this series, that's why you're seeing on the screen right here, Suns in 6. I love what the Mavericks have done this season. I love what they did to the Utah Jazz. And maybe, just maybe, I am sleeping on the Mavericks. Maybe this series does go 7. I think Phoenix takes care of business tonight. I think they take game 1. They make the statement. Devin Booker's back. That's going to provide some energy, some momentum, having him back. But then as the series goes on, the series could get real. If the Mavericks are really who they have shown throughout the second half of this season, to get them up to where they are now, to take care of the Jazz the way they did, they can compete with the Suns. Getting Devin Booker back, that makes the Suns a completely different animal. I think they would have swept the Pelicans if Devin Booker plays that whole series. At least a gentleman's sweep in that series. So I think the Phoenix Suns, they've been the best team all season. As long as Devin Booker is healthy, they take care of the Mavs in 6. But we're going to find out tonight because I know Luka, he's just a different animal. And as soon as you start doubting guys with that type of ability is where you find yourself in a hole. So let's see. I got the Suns in 6 against the Mavs. But let's get into the real stuff here, what we're actually here to talk about. So we'll finish out the show just talking about this Philly and Miami series. Just going to give you my outlook for game 1 as well as the entire series. We'll go over some timetables as far as Embiid, what the Sixers are going to need to do in order to replace Embiid, right? Like who's going to do it? How do they do it? We'll go over all of that. But just starting out, talking about this Sixers Heat matchup, a lot of caveats in this. There's so many question marks up in the air. I mean, half of the Heat's roster is questionable for game 1. Now, obviously, I don't put much, thought into those listings. Like Jimmy Butler's going to play. Kyle Lowry's already been ruled out, as you guys know. But Jimmy Butler is obviously going to play. He's going against his old team. He's got a point to prove here. And I do want to say shout out to Jimmy Butler because the comments that he made about Embiid, the injury, wanting him back out there healthy, I so appreciate that stuff because he didn't have to. He didn't have to say that. He didn't have to show love for his old teammate. He didn't have to put it out there that Miami wants to beat the best version of Philly. That's what you call respect. That's called it's called dignity. It's called just showing true pride. And I respect Jimmy, so much for things like that. That's why Philadelphia, even to this day, even after him leaving Philly, most of the fan base still fucks with Jimmy Butler because he's always kept it real. He's a very authentic dude. But yeah, I loved his comments on Embiid. But let's talk about the Embiid situation first of all. It's the biggest caveat of the entire series. When is Embiid returning? So we know he fractured his, I believe it was his right orbital bone. I believe so. It was the opposite one of the one he fractured in 2018. So he's going to be out games 1 and 2. He's going through concussion protocol as well. He's going to be out at least games 1 and 2. He's not heading down to Miami. He's going to stay in Philly. And then hopefully when the series flips back to Philly, game 3 on Friday, we'll get Embiid back. We'll see where he's at. Hopefully he's able to play. Hopefully he's able to play well. Depends a lot on his visibility. If he's going to be wearing a mask, how comfortable is the mask? How much pain tolerance is he dealing with between his face and his thumb? Excuse my dog, they're barking in the background. But no, he's just got a ton of stuff going on. His body, it's obvious the 82 game season on top of the playoffs, it's taking its toll and it's wearing down on all of these guys right now. I'm sure all of these guys got bumps and bruises they're not talking about, but game 3 is like the benchmark, right? Like that's survive till game 3. Steal 1 in Miami in this series is well and alive, right? So that's the one thing that I was looking at with the Sixers in this matchup. Just them making sure. I mean, come on with the dog, man. Dog's just barking. Like, come on. No, but in this series, you talk about the Sixers. It's gonna rely a lot on Joel Embiid, and I know I was talking to a lot of my friends, some of the guys at DSM Media as well over the weekend when this injury news broke out. I believe it was Friday that we heard this, maybe Friday or Saturday. But you find out Embiid, fractures the right side of his face, is going to miss some time against the Sixers. I said it to my colleagues immediately. I said, What the Sixers need, they can survive. They can steal one in Miami. They need an estimated timeline for Embiid's return. It can't just be indefinite. It can't just be up in the air like, will he return game 4, 5, or 6? It needed to be this as soon as they get back to Philly, either game 3 or 4, which is what it's looking like, depending on Embiid's pain tolerance. I would imagine this dude's his drive, his will to win. He's going to be there game 3 if he's able to go. But just looking at having that thought like, oh, I just got to survive till game 3 or game 4. I just got to get back to Philly for guys like Maxey, Harden, Tobias, to have that sense of Embiid will be back. We just got to get to this point. Having it up in the air, that helps no one. That kind of leaves you in a dead space, makes you worry a little bit. Like, how long are we going to have to go? Do we have to go the rest of the season without Embiid? As soon as you get that estimated timeline, I think it adds a little bit of urgency, but it also allows to take off some of the pressure. You don't have to do it the whole series. You just got to get through these first couple of games. So that's the first thing that I wanted to address, just the mindset or the mentality that comes by when your MVP gets injured and he's out for a couple games. It definitely hurts. You're not going to see the best version of the Sixers. It's that simple. Embiid makes them the best version of the Sixers. We know that wholeheartedly, obviously, right? But having that estimated timetable for his return gives you a sense of just got to survive, right? Just got to get, we got the guys that we got, next man up, just survive till this point, right? So that's the exciting thing. The other exciting thing for game 1 specifically, as I mentioned earlier, Kyle Lowry is out. Kyle Lowry obviously isn't the guy that he used to be in Toronto. He's still a very, very valuable asset for the Miami Heat. You talk about a leader, you talk about an offensive orchestrator, a guy that can get his own shot when they need somebody to get their own shot. They only got a few guys that can actually do that between Jimmy, Harrow, Kyle Lowry. You could even throw Oladipo with the way he's been playing lately, but we'll see how consistent that stays. But the Kyle Lowry injury is kind of huge. You talk about just the experience that he brings to that roster. This isn't the Atlanta Hawks that the Miami Heat are running into. This team in the Sixers, they still got some nice talent there. They got some nice experience between Danny Green, Tobias, Harden. These guys have been in the playoffs before. They played in tough series before. So this isn't going to be, just another pushover for Miami. And I think they know that. I'm not even thinking that Miami's going to come out and, take for granted that the Sixers are playing without Embiid. I think they're going to come out and they're going to try to take advantage of that, right? They're not going to take it for granted. They're going to take advantage of that. But the Sixers, I think they have the tools if guys can start the series hot. That's going to be a key thing here. If the guys aside from Harden, Maxey, can Niang start the series hot? Can Danny Green start the series off on the right foot? Can Tobias Harris hit some three-pointers? Can Maxey keep his consistent three-point shooting going? These are all question marks that will have to be addressed, and you have to hope for the best. Can Shake give you some buckets off the bench? Can Korkmaz potentially give you some buckets off the bench? All of these guys matter more now with Embiid out, right? So we already know that. Jimmy's knee. I know he missed a game or two against the Hawks. I think it was just one game, but they were able to survive. And that's the other thing. Lowry's out, Jimmy questionable, all these guys questionable down the line. If any one of these guys misses some time, the Miami Heat are a very, very deep team. They've showed that throughout the season by maintaining the number 1 seed in the East, despite most of their starters not playing together throughout the season at one point. So they got depth. It's another thing. If Kyle Lowry's out, the Sixers have no right to take it easy on the Heat at all, period. They have no right to come out with a lack of energy tonight. But you still have to remind them to not do that, right? They still are humans. It happens. You lose focus. That can't happen regardless of who's on the court for Miami. And I think Miami views the Sixers that same way. They know what's up. James Harden, people make fun of him. People say he's washed. He still averages 22, 11, and 6. I mean, it's ridiculous to just kind of throw him under the bus and think he's just going to flop here tonight. I think James Harden, we're going to talk about it in just a few moments here, but I think he's going to come out and he's going to put the Heat on notice. What's going on with Jimmy? Because he is the one injury where, if his knee is inflaming, if he's uncomfortable out there on the court, if he can't give his all out there, that's the one guy on the Miami Heat that they can't afford to miss. You can't afford to miss his experience, his mentality, the way he closes games. He's their closer. We know how big Jimmy is in the big moments, right? So you talk about if you lose Jimmy at any point throughout this series, huge advantage to the Sixers. Obviously, Embiid's out the first two games. That's a huge advantage to the Heat. I'm not trying to throw the Heat under, but obviously Jimmy is that guy that makes a difference. Obviously, Bam Adebayo, he's another one. Big piece as far as defensively and offensively, just being a part of this team because he covers so many of the deficiencies of the Miami Heat between Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. And, obviously Jimmy's health is going to be important here. Once again, I'm not putting too much thought into the knee, just bringing it up as one of those caveat points as to what can change this series, right? So I do want to talk about who's going to replace Embiid, because it's not just going to be one guy. And how did the Sixers address it? Because it's not going to be in the same way as when you have Embiid, right? It's going to be a committee. Doc Rivers has already said he's going to address the center position by committee, and I think that's the right way to go. I had, pondered, obviously I like the matchup of Paul Reed and Bam Adebayo. Now, Bam Adebayo is obviously way further developed than Paul Reed. Paul Reed's got sparing minutes throughout the regular season and now has become like the set backup center in that series against Toronto. But he does not have a ton of experience out there in the court. Let's just be honest. My concern with Paul Reed, fouls. He fouls a lot. He does... I'm not going to call it dumb. He just does some questionable stuff. He gets out there. He plays ahead of himself. Don't want him to do that against this Miami Heat team because it can cost the Sixers if he gets kind of out of his game. Just hustle, play with energy, stay on the ground. Don't get off your feet. Stay on the ground, stay straight up, and play. We need Paul Reed to stay out of foul trouble in this series because we don't want to see DeAndre Jordan. Period. Now, Charles Bassey's another guy who, man, I wish he would have just got some more run throughout the regular season because now it would be so valuable to have him as a viable backup option. As much as I love Charles Bassey, I think I would probably throw Charles Bassey as the backup if he's healthy. I know Doc isn't going to do that. I personally think he's going to lean on DeAndre Jordan at least at some point throughout this series as either the backup or maybe even starting him and allowing Paul Reed to stay in his backup role. I don't want to see that. I would rather see Paul Millsap starting if you wanted to do that. I'm okay with starting Paul Reed and then using Tobias at the 5 small ball center at some points throughout this game. You talk about the Heat. Bam Adebayo isn't the tallest guy in the world. He is athletic. He is a great rebounder. He's a great defender, but he's not going to kill a guy like Tobias Harris on the defensive end, in my opinion. We'll see how it plays out if they decide to go that route. In my opinion, if Tobias Harris can guard Pascal Siakam, I think he can guard Bam Adebayo personally. So you have options, but ultimately it's going to be by committee. You're not going to have one player that's going to come in and fill what Embiid does. He's the MVP for a reason. And as I mentioned, small ball, and when I say small ball, I mean Niang and Toby playing the 4 and 5. You're going to have to do it at some point in this series. We talked about Doc Rivers spreading the floor around James Harden. I think we're going to see some Houston type stuff where we're going to have all guys spread out across the 3-point line. You're going to allow Harden to get the matchup that he wants. He's going to drive and he's going to be able to kick to whoever he likes for open shots. Miami is a next level defensive team. We're going to see how that plays out tonight and kind of what they do to address James Harden and his aggressiveness and his driving down the lane and the step back threes. How are they going to guard James Harden tonight? Is it going to be PJ Tucker? Is it going to be Jimmy Butler? Who's going to be the primary defender on James Harden? They have a lot of guys that they can throw at him. How will Doc Rivers get Tyrese Maxey involved? Get the matchups you like for Tyrese Maxey. We saw throughout the regular season in the one game that the Sixers were able to take care of the Miami Heat without James Harden and Embiid. Obviously, that was what I would call a fluke win, let's be honest. And just while we're on that point, that's why much of what happened in the regular season simply doesn't matter because the Miami Heat beat the Sixers when they had Embiid, Tobias, and Maxey, And the Miami Heat didn't have Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo or Tyler Herro. I think it was like Gabe Vincent had the game of his life. Then you had the Sixers in reverse beating the Heat with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro, but they didn't have Embiid or Harden. Max was able to get off in that game because Doc Rivers put him in situations to get great matchups. That's going to be key in this game, and it's going to be something they have to focus on. They have to get Tyler Herro switched on to Tyrese Maxey. They have to get Duncan Robinson switched on to Tyrese Maxey and James Harden. They have to get these matchups that they like to the point where those guys maybe become unplayable, especially a guy like Duncan Robinson who fell out of the rotation. We know how hot he can get on the offensive end from behind the arc. So there's a lot of ways to combat this Miami team, but what it comes down to, Miami is deep. Miami has a lot of different ways that they can attack you offensively. They have a lot of shooting that they can spread you out with. They can go into big lineups with some of their center options that they have there. They can go into small ball lineups, spread you out and get 3 points galore. I mean, they have a lot of different ways they can attack you, and they're one of the smartest and best defensive teams with arguably the best head coach in the game right now, in Eric Spoelstra. So one thing, and maybe is one of the final notes here, do not take Miami for granted. Do not take them lightly. And I don't want it to be misunderstood or think that I am taking them lightly or that I don't understand the Heat culture that they have down in Miami. I know what they got. I know what they've done this season. They're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. Now, when I think of matchups throughout the playoffs, I do think the Sixers match up well against the Miami Heat. It's not the greatest matchup. Like I said, they're a great defensive team. Better matchups, in my opinion, than the Toronto Raptors as far as one-on-one matchups. But Miami Heat have the better team, the better coach, the better defense, the smarter defense, the faster reacting defense. They're going to be able to put Philly in some tough situations. We have to see Philly persevere, step through. You're playing without your MVP. James Harden, what do you got? Maxey, what do you got? Tobias, what do you got? We have to see. Next question, which James Harden shows up in this series? That's going to be the key to Philly just simply being able to compete with Miami, be able to hang in there, be able to steal a game 1 or 2 in Miami. That's the only way. We need Harden to play like an all-star. That's not asking a lot. I'm simply asking him to do what he's done most of the time since he's been in Philadelphia with the 76ers. Anywhere from 20 to 25 points, anywhere from 8 to 14 assists. It seems like this guy just racks those type of games up at any moment. But anywhere from 8 to 12 assists, and I think we're in a good position to win as the Sixers, even without Embiid. Harden, I think the optimal Harden in game 1, what he needs to do tonight, what I think has to happen in order for the Sixers to steal this game on the road, anywhere from 20 and 10. I think 20 points, 20-plus points, 10-plus assists. I know that's a lot, but it's not a lot for Harden if he averages that. 10-plus assists in this game. He has to be aggressive. Like we saw in Game 6 against Toronto, that's the Harden I want to see tonight against Miami. But play within yourself. Not a lot of turnovers. We got to be smart with the ball. Turnovers are going to be a big thing here because we need to limit defensive possessions in reality. We got to slow this game out. We got to slow this game down because the defense is going to be hurting without Embiid. And that's what's not being talked about enough for me. I know Embiid averages 30 points. He averages 10, 11 rebounds. He does a lot of the playmaking on offense. He gets double, triple team, takes that attention. That's going to be missed heavily. Do not get that wrong. Where he is going to be missed the most is on the defensive side of the ball, the anchor. We see it all across the league when those anchors get removed, those defenses go down significantly. We are going to give up points to the Miami Heat in the paint. We're going to give up rebounds. It's what's going to happen. We got to control what we can control. We cannot turn the ball over. We cannot get in foul trouble. You have to hit shots. Let's get that across. Let's make that very clear here. The Sixers have to make shots in this series. You cannot go through cold stretches from all of your players. Somebody needs to get hot every single night in order to have a chance against the Miami Heat. And we saw what they did to Trae Young in the first series. That is the worst that I've ever seen Trae Young play in any type of basketball setting. And that's just 100% transparency there. The Miami Heat did an incredible job against Trae Young. Is that because the Hawks were beat up? No Clint Capella? I don't know. I think the Heat are just simply a better team than the Hawks. I think we saw the Sixers lose to the Hawks last year in the playoffs. That just simply shouldn't have happened. But that's a whole, that's a whole offseason talk type of thing. But just looking at this game, Harden, we know what he has to do. I don't think he has to average 30 points per game, simply put. Tobias Harris, talk about him a little bit. I'm going to wrap the show up here, but Tobias Harris has the chance to show his worth. He was arguably the best player. Doc said it himself. Tobias was arguably the best player in that first series against Toronto with his defensive efforts, being ready for the moment, being ready to take big shots, hit big shots, drive the lane, get good shots. He's going to be huge against Miami. He has to play smart. Can't turn the ball over. Can't take bad shots. Can't force things. Play like you did against Toronto. Show up on the defensive end. Hit the glass. Do the other things. He's showing his worth so far. Let's continue that. Let's keep the consistency. I think, when it comes down to predicting tonight's game, predicting the series, there's so many question marks throughout. People are going to call me a homer. They're going to say I have my blinders on. We're going to really know in this series. I think game one, I think you take game one with a grain of salt regardless. Sixers win, you take it with a grain of salt. Sixers get demolished, you take it with a grain of salt. We can't overreact to this game one tonight, period. Positive or negatively. We cannot overreact. It is their first game in however long since they have played without Joel Embiid throughout an entire game. This is the first one in a while. There's going to be ups and downs to finding that comfortability without Joel Embiid taking that attention out there. James Harden finding his gear and where to stay at throughout the game. Tyrese Maxey finding out exactly what we need from him without Joel Embiid. Tobias Harris. Down the line, they have to adjust. We can't assume that they'll just be able to do this on the fly. If we see the Sixers come out and get blown out tonight, I'm not going to overreact. You're missing your MVP. I think game two, regardless of the outcome of game one, is going to be the true measurement of where the Sixers are at, where the Heat are at. Let's say the Sixers win game one. The Heat are going to come out hell-bent in game two to win that game because they know they cannot drop two against the Sixers without Embiid. You can't do that. Because one, you drop two, you give Embiid more time to rest and potentially come back at a later date, maybe game four instead of game three if they win the first two. Highly unlikely the Sixers win the first two. Just want to be clear here. I understand that. But, just thinking about mindsets going into each game. If Miami beats them game one, blows them out, I think the Sixers rebound. It's going to be harder to win the game two, period, for the Sixers. If they drop game one, I don't know. They might be starting the series 0-2, depending on how this game one goes. But I think game one of the first two in Miami is the one that you have to win if you're going to steal one, in my honest opinion. And I think they do tonight. I think the Sixers come out. I think they get hot. I think that plays a part in all of this. If the guys just come out shooting the lights off the ball, if Maxey hits 5 threes tonight, if Tobias hits 2 threes and Harden hits 3 threes, they all go over, 15, 20, 25 points. Sixers might win this game, right? They have a good chance of winning the game. So I think that's part of what I'm feeling here. I think guys like Danny Green could come out hot. I think guys come out ready to step up in game one. Then I think game two, Miami resets their footing, establishes themselves as the dominant team, especially with Embiid out. And you end up seeing this series go 1-1. Overall, I'm going Sixers in 7 here, guys. I'm keeping the belief. I think as long as Embiid gets back game 3, we have a strong chance of holding the fort in Philly. Just the resurgence game 3. Let's say Embiid comes back. The energy that brings of having him in the building, having him on the court, and even in the mask, the phantom of the process, the type of energy that's going to receive could be the type of energy that propels Philly to a next level of a next gear in their play. And you just hope that Embiid can come back still in shape, come back, be able to play close to his normal production. Obviously, he's not going to be able to get there with the multitude of injuries he's dealing with, but you hope that you can still get the 25 and 10 guy that is there as like a bottom liner for Embiid, or a base floor for Embiid production. If you can get that, you have a good chance of winning this series. It's going to come down to the Sixers being smart. It's going to come down to Doc Rivers being able to make adjustments on the fly, because there's going to be a lot of caveats and things to throw off this series. I mentioned some of them. No Kyle Lowry in game 1, Jimmy's knee, Embiid coming back game 3. There's so many things that can play a role in this series. And then finally, it's going to come down to the Sixers hitting more shots than the Heat. It sounds so dumb. It sounds so simple, but that's what it comes down to. Both of these teams can light it up at any moment. If the Heat come out and they're hitting 3 after 3, the Sixers are going to have a long but short series, if that makes sense. But I'm instilling my faith in the rest of this group around Embiid to hold down the fort games 1 and 2. Just simply don't go out there and get demoralized. You get back to game 3 and you're 0-2, but you played them well without Embiid. That's still a good starting point, getting Embiid back, being back in Philly for 2 games, and potentially tying that series back up to extend it. But I think the Sixers are able to steal game 1 tonight. I think this is their moment. I think this is the opportunity to steal one in Miami. And it could also be the one that kind of lopsides this series to the Sixers winning in 7. Because in order for the Sixers to win this series, they have to steal at least one in Miami. I think game 1 is that game without Kyle Lowry, without part of your leadership there. Jimmy questionable. Guys having a little bit of a break in between games. The Sixers, I think the break's good for them, though. And maybe it's good for the Heat as well. They're a little bit older as well. We'll see. Sometimes that plays a disadvantage when you have so much time off. We'll see how it affects both teams. I think the Sixers come out, statement win tonight. They come out hot. James Harden has a game. Maxey has a game. I think Maxey could be the underlying star of the game tonight, as we saw in that one win that the Sixers had over Miami where he had 28. But they got to expose mismatches. The matchups are much better than what they were in Toronto, in my opinion. So the Sixers got to take advantage of that. But it's going to come down to playing smart, playing better than the other team, wanting it more. We know how bad Jimmy Butler wants to win every time he steps on the court. You have to want it more. You know how bad PJ Tucker wants to win every time he steps on the court. You have to want it more. And that's what it comes down to. Sixers have to be resilient. You're going against the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference tonight. It's time to show up. What, like Danny said, nut up or fold, right? Guys got to step up. They got to show their stuff. And I'm hoping we see it tonight, guys. But I'm going Sixers in 7, Warriors in 6, Bucks in 7, and I'm going Suns in 6. You got my full series predictions here for the round 2 matchups. Let's get it started. We got basketball to play, guys. I'm excited. I know the Embiid injury sucks, but we got a timetable. We got a set return date. Hopefully game 3, at the latest game 4, we get Embiid back. Just survive. Get one in Miami. Get one in Miami. I think it's tonight, guys. But that's going to be it for this episode of Scotty Talks NBA. Make sure you're following DSM Media at DSM_media on Twitter, at DSM Media on TikTok, at DSM.DoSomethingMajor on Instagram, and just simply search DSM Media on Facebook. You'll see the logo. Also, make sure you're subscribed to DSM Media on YouTube. That's where we want to get you all involved. We're trying to get more engagement, get you guys more involved in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to DSM Media on YouTube. Turn the notifications on. You're notified every day with our daily content covering Philly sports, as well as the entire sports spectrum. And of course, myself, if you could just follow me on any social media platform you prefer, you can find me at Scotty Drown. That's TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, down the line. But definitely let me know how you're feeling going into this series. Let me know who you think's going to win. And go Sixers, guys. Now or never. Let's get it. That's going to be it for this episode. Enjoy the day. Go Sixers. Peace.
Yeah.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA.